Yo, Mitch. Yo, Mitch. Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hey, Ed. What's up?
Hey, can you believe it's been 45 years since Rocky opened?
Oh, yeah, I love that movie. In fact, I use it for my training program.
Yeah, I can see you're really hardcore. Do you want to, how long have you had that meat in there for?
A couple of weeks now.
Oh, my gosh. Well, do you want to give us a bit of a demonstration?
Yeah, sure. Hold on. Gotta hydrate, Ed.
Come on, do it Rocky style. Give it a big whack. I guess we cut Mitch. Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
This is Mitch Halleck.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on us and joining us. If you're a regular, welcome back. And obviously you're taking those bran flakes, so that's kind of good. We've got a great show. We've got
It's all about being regular.
Really, yeah. We've got a great show for you this week, looking at a classic film from 1976. If you want to find out more about the show and our episodes, what can you do, Mitch?
Oh, Ed, it's simple as punching that like button down there, or the subscribe button, I mean to say, and you will be notified when Ed and I go on another excellent adventure into movies, TV, toys, and more here on the mighty YouTube.
That's right. And we're looking at a classic from 1976, Rocky. It's an amazing movie. It's a uplifting movie, and it was a box office phenomenon in 1976. Did you see Rocky when it came out in the cinemas?
I did see it in the cinemas. In fact, Ed, it ran for a whole year back in the day when movies would actually run for a whole year. There was no DVDs or VHSs or cable and all that stuff. This movie opened November, Thanksgiving time here in the States, of 1976, and it ran for months. It was the #1 movie that year in 1976. It was nominated for, I think about 8 Academy Awards.
10 Academy Awards.
Won 3 of the big ones, the ones that really count.
Best film, best director, and best editing.
Oh, I thought Stallone got something for writing.
No, he was nominated. He was nominated as best actor and also as
you know what?
best screenplay.
I'm thinking of the photo of him holding the statue because it must have been for the best picture. You're right. But he was nominated for best screenplay, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
He was. Okay. And the rest of the cast too. Burgess Meredith was nominated. Burt Young was nominated. 2 in the same category. Best supporting actor in the same
Talia
category.
Shire was nominated as well.
And Sylvester Stallone as well. Yeah.
Yes.
And best music, obviously, they had to have that up there, right?
It was nominated for best song. We'll get to all
that. We're jumping ahead. But anyway, yes, to answer your question, I did see it in the theater because it ran so long. Everyone was talking about it in my school. Even our local priest would go into his church and he'd do his sermon, and he used Rocky as his story one weekend. I'm like, oh, it's got to be good if the priest is talking about it. And he was like, how Rocky went the distance, and Jesus goes the distance for you too. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know where this is coming from, but sure. So here's the story. I go to see Rocky the last day it's playing at the cinema on a Tuesday. And I begged my mom and my grandma to take me to see it because it was PG. And I think I was 10 or 11. And my grandmother said it might be a little too rough because of the language. They didn't know, because PG back in the 70s is not like PG back in the 90s and 2000. They can get away with a lot of rough stuff.
Yes.
So we go to the movie. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because guess what opened up the very next day when Rocky left? And I went back to the movies the next day.
Star Wars?
Star Wars. Yep. So I saw the biggest movie of 76 and what would be the biggest movie of 77 back to back, Tuesday and Wednesday. That's how crazy it was. But it was fantastic. That's when people used to cheer in the movie theaters, actually stand up and yell and clap like they're like in the theater, like actually in the screen, part of the movie. but it was crowd pleaser. What about you? Did it run? Was it a big success?
It was. It came out a year later in 1977. I didn't see it because I was a little bit too young for that sort of film. I do remember seeing Rocky 2, which came out in 1979. And by that stage, I had watched it. I think it might have been on television at that stage. So I had seen that, and obviously the subsequent films. But we watched it again on Apple TV Plus. It's in 4K on Apple TV Plus, and you can't get I went to look for my DVD, which I must have donated to Goodwill at some point. So I was going, where can I get it? And you can't get it anywhere. So watching it, it's hard. I think they're waiting for the 4K. There's a Blu-ray box set, but that's hard to find here, and they're waiting, I think, for a 4K set to come out. And again, what an amazing, uplifting, and I think a typically 70s movie where it's got that slow, it's got that slow style, but it's really character driven. And I've said this about Saturday Night Fever, another classic from the 70s, is not necessarily a film about disco. Rocky is not necessarily a film about boxing. It just happens to be set in that world. And I know that Sylvester Stallone, this was like a passion project for him. He wrote it. He was down to his last couple of $100 when he was writing it. He had the caveat of, when it did get picked up, that he had to star in it as well as write it. So there was a lot of going against him because he was not a big star at this stage. He had
no,
in
not
a few.
I was going to say the Lords of Flatbush.
Yes,
is the only other thing we saw him in here, because that stars Henry Winkler, and I remember my sisters wanting to see it because Fonzie was in it.
Yes,
and that's the reason why we saw the Lords of Flatbush, and they were running on TV starring Henry Winkler and Sylvester Stallone and Perry King, and there's one other fella I can't think of, but yeah, that was really the movie that everybody saw Sylvester Stallone in, and he was not a household name. And like you said, he was down to his last buck. He even had to sell his dog that plays Butkus, his dog. That's his real life dog in the movie Butkus, named after Dick Butkus, who was a big football player here in the States.
Right?
Yeah. But he sold that dog for $40 to a guy who owned a 7-Eleven, and because he couldn't afford to feed it anymore. That's how down he was. I think he had like $103 left in the bank. And you're right. He wrote the story based on a real life incident that he witnessed in 1975. There was a boxer named Chuck Wepner, Wepner, who actually was picked to go fight Muhammad Ali, who was the champion of the world, and no one thought it was going to ever be a big deal because who's this guy? And even Muhammad Ali didn't even train for the fight because it's like, it's just some ham and egg or some local guy. It's just another fight. Nobody's expecting anything to happen out of the ordinary. And what happens? Chuck goes the distance, goes the full 15 rounds, actually knocks Ali onto the tarp at one time, knocks him down on the ring because Ali didn't even train for the fight. That's how overconfident he was. He's like, you got to be kidding me. This guy, what chances does he have? Yeah, I'm the king of the world. Same story for Rocky. Literally, Apollo Creed, overconfident, all about publicity, all about the name in the paper, and look at me, and I'm number one, and all this, and let's do a publicity stunt. Let's get a local guy and give him a shot at the title, and it's all one big stunt. That's all it is. And Rocky, they say in the movie, he's training like it's the real deal because his manager says to him at one point, he thinks it's a real fight. You're thinking it's just for fun and games, and this guy's legit. And then it's not until they actually fight that Apollo Creed realizes you better start fighting for real because he's coming at you. He's not just doing this for the cameras and all that stuff. So you're right. It is about boxing, but it's not really. It's more about Rocky's doubts about himself as a person. Can he really do it? Can he really achieve anything? Because they say in the movie a couple times that he had heart, but he never applied himself. Yes. It's like he had talent, he had skills, but he was like so many other people in the world. He was just letting it go to waste. He didn't believe in himself enough to actually, apply himself and really go to, as far as he could go. So that's the whole underlying uplifting message. Maybe that's why the priest was using it. Plus it opens up on a shot of Jesus Christ in the middle. But no one ever realizes that. But when Rocky starts, the first thing you see is Jesus and they're
Yes,
at like
and
the
that
church.
and that, like that gong and that wonderful Bill Conti score,
Yeah.
which we'll talk a little bit about that later on, but which harkens back to, I know that I think it was still Sylvester Stallone and the director John G. Alvarez wanted to have it sort of sound a bit like a gladiatorial combat.
Yeah.
The boxing, and it's got that. It's really got that. It's a really good opening. And I think what shines through, watching it again, is that Sylvester Stallone's character of Rocky Balboa, or Robert Balboa, as
Robert's
he was known
his real
in the
name,
original, is a really, he does have heart. He's a good person. He's a debt collector for a local loan shark as well. But he has a good heart and means well. I think that really shines through in Sylvester Stallone's performance. You know, you feel like he can do better and wants to do better, but he's sort of stuck in that rut. And he sort of sees Adrian, Talia Shire, as, you know, maybe like a flower in the desert, I think. You know, she runs
being picked on.
She runs it works at the local pet store where he buys his pet turtles, which are still alive.
They're still alive, by the way. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, Cuff and Link are still with us. So
which is nice to hear. I don't know if they still get royalties, but you know, I'm sure they're living a good life.
Screen Actors Guild, you don't know.
That's right. Talia Shire, who plays Adrian, with her performance, she sort of wanted to get out of the shadow a little bit of her brother, which is
Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah. One of the things, her hesitancy to go out and maybe interact with Rocky, one of the main reasons, especially when he invites her back to her room, is that she actually had the flu at the time and didn't want to infect Sylvester Stallone. So that's why she's a little bit
I didn't know that about the flu thing. Yeah, no, you know what's weird? I watched this movie now, and you talk about the timing of the 70s movies and such. It's pretty fast. You don't think it's a fast movie. It's only 1 hour, 59 minutes, barely 2 hours. But maybe because I've seen it so many times, it just moves very fast. I mean, you open it up, you see Rocky, you meet all the characters really quick. You meet Paulie, you meet Rocky, you meet Apollo Creed. And then here's the story. And then Mickey comes and they give him a shot at it. He wants to train him. And then we see the great training sequence. And then bang, there's the fight.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no wasted space. And you know what that is, though? They didn't have a lot of money on this movie at all. It was $1.1 million to produce it. And like you said, Stallone's deal was they were going to give him, I think it was $100,000 or something like that, just for the story. But he said he'd never forgive himself if he let it go and somebody else starred in it and it became a big movie. And they were looking at people like Burt Reynolds, Jamie Khan, Paul
Robert
Newman,
Redford at one point.
Robert Redford. Yeah, they wanted a name. They didn't want an unknown. And I think they were losing money on the movie New York, I heard, which was a Robert De Niro, Liza Minnelli movie. So they were like, sure, save some money where you can. So that played into it. And that's why they just let Stallone be the star of the movie. And that I think he got $1 million for it. I do know he went back and bought his dog from the guy that he sold it to, but it wasn't for $40. The guy charged him like $15,000 to get the dog back. And he wanted a part in the movie. So whoever that guy is, what a jerk you were. But anyway, like I said, they don't waste a lot of time. I was going to say they don't have time or money to do scenes that weren't in the movie. There's not a lot of deleted scenes. It's like what you see is what they filmed, you know?
No, exactly right. And when they, you know, again, he was not well known at that point. The studio was unsure about having him as a star. They showed, the rumor is they showed a version of, they showed Lords of Flatbush to the execs. And the person who was saying, oh, that's Sylvester Stallone, they pointed to Perry King. And the guy thought it was Perry King who was going to be in the movie, not actually Sylvester Stallone. So,
well, he was a lot heavier too in the Lords of Flatbush. He had more weight on him, so he didn't look like he did in Rocky. He wasn't svelte in Rocky either. He's playing a heavyweight fighter. In the later Rocky movies, he trims down and gets more muscular, but he wasn't, you know, like you don't think of Rocky being a little out of shape, but no, in this movie, I think he's like maybe 220, 230. He's a little hefty as opposed to the later films there. And the other thing I just caught when the timeline is Rocky gets picked to fight Apollo Creed, played by the great Carl Weathers, who you might know from The Mandalorian or Force 10 from Navarone or Action Jackson. He's in a lot of movies.
He is.
He gets picked on Thanksgiving. The fight is on January 1st, 1976, as part of the big bicentennial that's going on here in America to celebrate the 200 years anniversary of the country. That's only about 5 or 6 weeks, depending on when Thanksgiving falls. So Rocky doesn't have much time to get in shape. I never realized it until I was watching. I go, wait a second, November, January 1st, literally 5 weeks. And that's what starts the whole thing, because when he starts to train, at first he could barely run up the stairs. There's that shot where he's like holding his side and he comes back and he has no energy whatsoever because he's so out of shape. And then he goes to who but Burgess Meredith,
yes,
as kids might know, as the Penguin.
The Penguin. I've got to say that there were elements of you could hear.
Yeah. Or you might know him too from Clash of the Titans, because he did have a resurgence in his career. Yeah, because he was around since the 30s. He was in Of Mice and Men. He was in the World War II. He was a big part in World War II. I think he was a captain in the Air Force, and then he did a lot of movies, a lot of theater work too, Shakespeare and stuff.
And he wasn't the original pick. Stallone wanted Harvey Keitel at one point, but and a few others, and a lot of these people said no because they were asked to audition for the role. Burgess Meredith obviously was happy to do that, and again, I suppose it's his defining role. People know him.
Oh yeah, that and the Penguin. I mean, you think of Burgess Meredith, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And like you said, I don't know how many weeks they shot it, but it couldn't have been many. Maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks shooting schedule.
I think it was a 28. They filmed it in 28 days.
So it was less than a month.
Yeah, there was a lot of guerrilla style filmmaking. They filmed a lot on the streets. A lot that looks great. Let's film it out the car.
I know that. I saw that. You know, when he's running through the market there in South Philadelphia, they literally just pulled up like, quick, run. And he's just running down the street and people are throwing stuff. Then he's running down the park. There's a lot. If there's any deleted scenes, there's a lot of footage of Stallone running. Like they had him by the docks, by the street, by the park, by the market. Yeah, there's a lot of Rocky running everywhere too.
Absolutely. And that scene, that famous scene where he runs up the steps, the first time he's got that stitch, which I think we can all relate to at the moment.
Oh yeah.
That was actually
right now.
Yeah, that was actually filmed in the same day, 2 hours apart. So they filmed him with the stitch going up, and then they obviously waited 2 hours for the sunrise to come up, and there he is, triumphant, running up that famous shot, which I'm sure many people have replicated. Kelly I was saying, we must go to Philadelphia. It looks beautiful.
Oh yeah.
There.
Oh yeah, we did that.
You've been there, and they've got the Rocky statue there now by the side of the steps.
Yeah. They do that. That's the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and those steps are what he runs up through. Everybody does that. You go there. I brought my 2 kids there back in 2010. What did they do? They raced up the stairs, and then they did it again, and they did it again. And then at the top of the they used to have the Rocky statue that was from Rocky 3. That used to be at the top, but they've since moved it so it's down on the ground for people that don't want to run up the stairs all the way. But I was going to say that famous dance that he does on top when he's triumphant is actually shown in reverse. When you watch that, when he's jumping around like that and doing this little dance, that film is reversed. I don't remember why, but they had to flip the film. So what you're doing is watching Stallone backwards when he's doing that. I got to remember the reason why, but there was something that happened with the film footage, and they said, just rewind it. No one's ever going to know the difference, but he's dancing.
And most people don't.
No, it's just weird. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is some weird flaw that happens, and they just reverse that little film there. The other thing about the stairs is the Steadicam. Yes. Everyone thinks that the Steadicam was invented for Rocky. It was actually used in 2 other movies before that. It was in Marathon Man and another picture I can't think of. But the guy that created that was a weight that they used to use, because if you try to run up the stairs, and I did it with my iPhone, it jiggles like this. I mean, you don't get a nice smooth transition as you're going up there. So the cameraman who designed it, he had a counterbalance, like a weight. So if you went this way, the weight compensated for it and kept the camera in perfect motion or level. And that's the famous tracking shot that they use when Rocky runs up the stairs. So just a little bit of thing. It might have been.
And you can actually see the creator of the Steadicam in some of the shots. In the boxing ring, there's a wide shot, and you can actually see him in the background.
He's got this harness on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it was a great. That's such a great. you know, there's overuse of montages and training montages. This is really like the first, I suppose.
Yeah, this is the one that they set the mold that all these other
Yes.
movies have copied since then, because before that, there wasn't any of this, you know, slow motion music as we watch him do the push-ups and all that, and he's building up to the fight and all. And the music's fantastic. Like
Oh my
you said,
gosh.
you could go run a marathon listening to that. You could go clean your house. You can go wash your car. You put that in there, you can't help but have your body suddenly start moving with it and building up to the excitement of the Bill Conti score there. There's actually a couple songs that I told you the other day. There's a love theme from Rocky, which is on the album. I actually have, that's the original album from the 70s. I remember my sister bought it and I had it for years, but there's lyrics, not the Gonna Fly Now. That's the theme to Rocky. Gonna fly now. Dun, dun. But then there's another one when Adrian and Rocky are in his apartment. And it's like, I will love you too. It's one of those 70s songs where they had the trumpets and everything.
Yes.
Sounds like, what's the guy's name? The Scottish singer. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Rod Stewart?
I saw him in concert years ago with the thick curly hair.
Tom Jones. He's
Tom
Welsh.
Jones. Yes, Tom Jones.
He's Welsh. But anyway.
Oh, whatever. It's the same thing. Anyway, so we just lost the entire country of
That's
Wales.
right. Yeah.
Sorry, Wales.
Well, I've got to say,
But anyway,
it's not-
no, it has
it's
that
not unusual.
jazzy-
So
Yeah, whatever. It's in there, and you could hear it playing. I think that charted. It didn't get in the top 10, that particular song, but I do remember hearing that on the radio.
and there
back
were,
in the day.
Gonna Fly Now by the theme to Rocky by Bill Conti. It hit the top of the charts. It was another instrumental that was
Look right now.
well,
No.
that wasn't from the actual soundtrack. That was a whole different performer that had put it on. It's a bit
okay.
like Star Wars with Miko doing and John Williams doing that. But
that vocal song, the love song, is called "You Take My Heart Away." Vocals by DeEda Little and Nelson Pigford. You know them.
I do. I've got all their album. So
All one of them. Yeah.
and
Buck-
Frank
Buckus
Stallone,
has his own song on here. The dog has his own thing. I just noticed that now.
Who Let the Dogs Out? Is that what it's called? What's it?
Oh, no. Oh, how could we forget? Take You Back. Performed by who else?
Frank Stallone.
Frank Stallone. Even though it says Valentine here, Frank Stallone is in Rocky. He's the street singer in the Philadelphia. And Stallone's dad is the bell ringer on the side
is.
at the boxing match. So there you
So
go.
you've got lots of interesting performances. We should talk a bit about Burt Young,
Burt Young?
as well.
Yes, Burt
Paulie?
Young. Paulie.
Now,
Paulie,
have you met Burt Young?
I have met Paulie. I was trying to find the photo. Maybe if I can get it before we post this, I'll show it. Nice guy. There's no difference. You ever see certain actors that there's really no difference between the characters they portray on screen and who they are in real life? That's the deal with Burt Young. Okay. Because I met Burt Young. He was at a car dealership here in Greenwich, Connecticut, and right up the road, Ed. And they said, come meet, Burt Young, actor Burt Young. So I go there and he was supposed to be there. And I show up and I'm like, where is he? Across the street from the car dealership was an Italian restaurant. So who do I see come walking out of the restaurant, pulling his pants up a bit because his belly was hanging over, and he's just like waving, and people are blowing the horn, yelling, "Hey, Paul!" He's like, "Hey, how are you?" And he's just doing that, walking across the street. It's like that scene with Ned Beatty when he's in Superman, when Otis comes there, dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun, bum, 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 bum. And that's how Burt Young walked into the car dealership, and everyone's yelling, "Paulie, Paulie!" Hey, how are you? He doesn't even try to tell him that his name's Burt Young. He just goes with it. And he sits down and I'm talking to him about maybe coming to my convention. And he's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Here's my number. And he got like a piece of paper. They just ripped it off and he's scrambling it, scribbling it down. I was like, this is not really acting. This guy's really like that.
Yeah.
So, but he's had a long career. Burt Young, besides being in the Rocky movies, you can see him on episodes of MASH. He shows up there in the background. He was in a movie here, Lovers and Other Strangers, which I think came out in the early 70s with B. Arthur, which was the reason why I mentioned that movie is that's the second movie I ever saw, and it was rated R. My grandmother, God rest her soul, took me to see 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was the first movie I ever saw with Kirk Douglas, Disney. And then we had time. So she goes, let's sneak into the next movie. So here I am as a mere child of 4 or 5 years old, learning the ways of stealing from my Italian grandmother. So we went right next door to the next movie, and it was Lovers and Other Strangers, rated R. Back then, a rated R was a hard R. It's not like this sissy stuff. There was like something going on you shouldn't see, especially when you're 5.
Yeah.
And I remember my mother picking her up, and she's like, "What'd you do? You took him to see a rated R movie with sex and all that?" She's like, he closed his eyes. I didn't. I say this because my grandma Amelia, God rest her soul again, was the person that went to see Rocky with me. And she loved this movie. She was so excited that there was an Italian guy on screen, and everybody that was Italian in this whole area, everybody was jumping around like, "Yo, that's our guy, yo." And I think yo became the national greeting for Italian Americans for the next 20 years. Everybody, yo, 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 yo. So that's a little side note there. But back to Rocky. It's a great movie. What other stuff can we talk about?
Well, I think a lot of people, maybe I'm generalizing, but sort of forget that, spoilers, Rocky doesn't win at the end of
He doesn't win,
Rocky. No. I think he probably deserved to win, but that last... It
was a technical knockout because the champ was the champ. The points automatically.
That's right. A split decision, they said.
Split decision there. Yeah, I'm sorry, not technical knockout. Split decision.
Yes. But I think what works with Rocky is that all the characters are really believable and they feel like they live where they live. Rocky's apartment, the gym, Paulie's and Adrian's house, everything.
Oh, the meatpacking place. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Did you know, I was talking about they didn't have much money on this movie budget. Do you know that turkey, when they go over to the house and Adrian's making the turkey for Thanksgiving and Paulie shows up and tells him to go out with Rocky, he throws the turkey out the thing. They actually had the crew outside the door catch the turkey in a blanket because they only had one. And when they shot it, they had to pin the drumstick back on the turkey so he could do the scene again multiple times. So when you watch that, if you look really good, you can see there's like a string hanging on that drumstick that Paulie pulls out because they had to tie it back to the thing. And then the ice skating rink.
Yes.
I was going to say that's another bit too. They didn't have enough money to pay extras to be in the ice skating rink too. That's why it's shown after hours and there's nobody in the place but Rocky and Adrian, because they couldn't afford extras to go around and skate and be cool. So they do that. And the reason why Stallone is running, he don't know how to ice skate. He doesn't know how. That's why he's walking alongside Adrian. He's like, I don't know how to ice skate.
Again, I feel all that scene. That's one of the most beloved scenes in the whole film. But they adapt. You can see there's the banner of Rocky.
Oh yeah, they paint the shirts
and they've got the wrong colored boxing.
That was legit. Yeah, that's true.
So Stallone goes, well, let's point it out. The same with his robe being too big for him. Let's point it out so that they make it part. And it's a very real, authentic story and performances from everyone.
Do you know who's in that in the background, uncredited? First time ever in a movie?
Are you going to say
Star Trek?
Dorn?
Michael Dorn is playing Apollo Creed's bodyguard.
I didn't even notice him, to be honest.
I've seen it. It's hard to pick him out because I never noticed it either, because he obviously doesn't have the ridges and looks like Worf, but he's in the background, but he's not credited, which I don't understand why. And the other thing I noticed years ago is when they do the overhead shot of the boxing ring, is you see how sparsely it's populated, because there's really only about 300 extras, and what they had to do was move the people around depending on where they shot it. So it looked like it was a full arena. In reality, there was nobody there. And only one bad edit is when they show from up above and you can see there's like nobody in those benches and seats. That's the only time it kind of gives it away. But other than that,
it was lit. I mean, they had it, it was very dimly lit, so you couldn't tell. And they did use some stock footage, which you can just tell, especially in the 4K version, because the quality of the stock footage is lower. But again, that's a cracker of an ending.
The only thing that
can't help but get
there's two bloopers, if you will, that gets me. You do see the movie camera a couple times because it's not an ordinary TV reporting camera. It's got the Panavision, that square box that's on of it. That kills me. And then there's another mistake I've caught, little things that no one notices, but when you see it a million times, when Mickey comes over to talk to Rocky to become his manager, Stallone is throwing darts at the wall. He's not paying attention to him. He throws 3 darts into the bathroom door, and then he goes into the bathroom and closes it behind him. There's 3 when he goes in, and then there's just 2 darts in the wall, and then they cut again, and the 3 dart, it just miraculously grew back. But that's one of the small little things
that scene with Mickey and that whole monologue about the stink in the bathroom. That was pretty much improvised on set because the bathroom did stink. That scene with Adrian and Rocky, where he after going to look at the stadium, he comes back and says he can't do it. They didn't want to put that in, but Stallone said, no, we've got to do this scene. He only had one shot to do it, and
one take,
and he did it. Again,
plus they had to give the place back to the landlord. They didn't have any more money to rent it out, so they said, okay, you got enough time to do, this much shooting, and they did it. So again, a lot of stuff is working for them. I mean, honestly, besides the character of Rocky, the whole production is really lucking out. I mean, everything seems to be going their way. The weather stayed all right. It snows a little bit. You could see it a couple times when they're running in the movie. There's some snow coming down because it can get some harsh winters out here.
I bet
when they filmed it. But no, again, everything works perfectly. Like we talk about Star Wars a lot. There was a lot of behind the scenes problem with Star Wars. I mean, the studio didn't believe in it. There was no money for it. The special effects weren't done. There was a sandstorm in Tunisia. There was a lot of problems getting Star Wars to come out and be the big movie. Rocky was like an underdog production. I mean, no one really expected much from it. So that's why I think everybody's mind was blown when it became the biggest movie of the year and around the world too.
It was huge, made over $100 million. And obviously all those nominations at the Academy Awards and various other awards around the world. Won't talk about the sequels really, but the success of that led to Rocky II in 1979.
Right, where he fights the Apollo Creed once again, but this time he wins and becomes the champ of the world.
Yep. So we've got that. Then there was Rocky III, which was
where he fights Mr. T.
That's right.
Yeah, well, which is an iconic thing because as a person who studies theater and all that, there's only so many stories. There's man versus man, man versus nature, man versus
wild.
I thought man versus nature is the same thing.
Well,
but I'm just saying. I was
commenting on Bear Grylls, but anyway, that's all right.
Oh, okay, whatever. The third movie is interesting because Rocky almost fights himself because he becomes so successful. He becomes like Apollo Creed.
Yep.
He doesn't care anymore. He's like, look at all this. He's got a beautiful car. He's got a beautiful house and all this stuff. Everything's going his way going from nothing to everything. So what happens? Here comes Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T, newcomer, who Stallone saw in some kind of bodyguard competition, who basically it's Rocky all over again. He's fighting himself because it's this eager guy who wants to prove himself and show what he can do. And what does he do? He knocks him out and he becomes the champ, and everything goes backwards. And now Rocky has to go with the help of Apollo Creed to train again, to learn how to fight, to become the champ again, becomes the champ. And then we go into Rocky IV, which is, I'm going to say Rocky versus the Machine, because in that movie you have Ivan Drago, played by
Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, I think that's Lundgren's first movie. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it is. He was
a chemistry student, wasn't he? Like a chemist. He wasn't an actor.
No, I think because after that he did
the He-Man Masters
of the Universe, and a few others. But and of course now we know him in Aquaman, and he's Expendables and everything like that.
Yeah. But no, they picked that movie because the time the United States and Russia were still going at it. He's like the perfect human being, perfect specimen. I mean, he's like built with steroids and machines and all this stuff. So Rocky does the opposite. They do this whole montage where they show him training and getting shot up with steroids, and there's Rocky in the snow training with logs and chopping wood, and he's like, going back to pioneer days. So that's that one. And funny thing is that movie's about to come out on November 11th here in the States. It's called Rocky versus Drago now, not Rocky IV. And they've gone in and they've done some sacrilegious things there. They've removed the scene where Paulie gets a robot for his birthday, which was like the highlight of the Rocky series, if you will. But that's gone now. So that comes out with new footage on November 11th, and then the DVD and the Blu-ray and 4K come out the next day. So maybe that's why you're having trouble finding it. They're holding off for Christmas and they want people to buy the box set. And then we go to Rocky V,
which is directed by John Alvarez, the original director
of. But it's kind of the low point of the Rocky series.
It didn't do as well as everyone had hoped. No. And then there was a bit of a break.
Well, they go back to that. They had Tommy Morrison, John Wayne's nephew, real life nephew, who was in the film, who was a boxer in real life, who's since passed away. But he was in there. It just wasn't good. I mean, Rocky was supposed to die in that movie. That's how they were going to end it. but I think either there's a test screening or they showed the audience and people were like, no, 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 Rocky can't die. So they brought him back and they have the street fight at the end, but he does lose everything. He goes from rags to riches to rags again. And they're back in Philadelphia, living on the street. Adrian works for the pet store and everything's there. And that was really a lousy way to end the Rocky series on like a dour note like that. But then they come back with Rocky Balboa, which is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It stands side by side with the original Rocky. And that's a perfect end cap for the series because he's older. Adrian's passed away. Everything that he loved is gone. The ice rink has been torn down. Paulie loses his job. And then he gets a chance to do an exhibition fight. And he comes back. And again, it's a joke. It's not real. It's not like he's going for the title or anything. But he's in his 60s and they don't want him to fight anymore because he's so old. And then he does this great. They're always good about doing speeches. Rocky always has some great, awe-inspiring speech. And he does this whole thing about who does to decide what to do. And then he tells his son some great advice that, life's not full of rainbows and unicorns and all this stuff. And it's going to keep hitting you and you got to get up and that's how you win. That's like iconic, that speech. It's like you can see it on one of those inspirational posters that
we use it in our year 8 drama class as one of the one that the students can choose. So yes,
we use it every week before the show starts. I start crying and then you start yelling at me like, get out there and do that show, Mitch. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Nobody's watching us. And then you think it's all over. And then what do? They come up with a whole new idea. They bring Apollo Creed's illegitimate son, played by Michael B. Jordan, into the story. And then that's all over again. Now Rocky comes back, but he's a supporting character. He's in the Mickey role. And then he has to fight cancer. So now Rocky fights cancer in that movie while he's training Apollo Creed's son. Boom. Another big hit on his hands. Fantastic. Then
Creed 2.
Creed 2. And then that's the end of the Rocky Balboa story, though.
Well, because Creed 3, they're doing Creed 3, but
it comes out next year. Yeah, he's not in it anymore. I don't know who he fights because Dolph Lundgren was in Creed 2. He came back once again, and it was Ivan Drago's son versus Rocky's kind of adopted son there, if you want, with Apollo Creed's son there. And then you're right, number 3, you don't need Stallone anymore. His story's been told, but
no,
I think we've done it all. But you know what's great about everything we always love talking about here is merchandise.
Yes. What
kind of merchandise was there for the Rocky movies there?
So there wasn't really a lot when it came out. I mean, it's not the sort of film that, you sort of have merchandise for. We've got the soundtrack, which you were talking about there. There wasn't a comic novel, a comic version of it or anything like that. But things started to heat up a bit more once it was popular, with Rocky 2 and Rocky 3. There was a Rocky board game that they brought out. I had the only Rocky things I've got. Well, it's not really Rocky. This is my from 1976. So from the year that Rocky came out, my Mego Muhammad Ali.
There you go.
Yep. Which was good. The only other
make him fight Fonzie. That's Amigo toy.
It is. It's good quality. It was in the UK. It was Dennis Fisher, I think. And then I've got this from the 80s, but he actually was a bit more Rambo. It was like a combination of Rambo and
it's like Marty Feldman, actually.
Yeah,
Marty Feldman as a boxer.
They brought out a Mr. T, a Clubber Lang version of that. Later on,
they had video games too. Don't forget
they had one on I think ColecoVision.
ColecoVision had a Rocky game, and then there was subsequent ones years later.
I played one on one of the Nintendo systems.
Yeah.
Which was quite good.
Xbox had one. I remember that. My sons played that. It was like crazy because you had to go through all the fighters from all the Rocky movies, and you gained more points, and eventually you had this big championship. Let me tell you, the house was screaming upstairs when my son Spencer finally beat. I don't know, was it Ivan Drago? I can't remember who the final bad guy was, but the popcorn, it was just like being in the movies again. Everyone was throwing popcorn around this house screaming when my son beat the computerized bad guy in the Rocky Xbox
game. Was really good fun. I remember enjoying that one. They also had later on in the 90s and 2000s, they brought out action figures, which
they did. Yeah,
you've got your Apollo Creed action figure there. They even brought out the meat I remember, which
we
was
have that. My son was collecting those, but it went out of control. It was like Star Wars. I mean, he started collecting them. They were like not very popular. They were literally, there was a store here called KB Toys, and we'd go in there and they'd be like 3 for $10 or something. And they had the initial characters. You had Rocky and the training outfit, and then you had like Apollo Creed. But then you're right, they went crazy. They started doing the meat. They started doing Rocky in this outfit. They did Hulk Hogan, who we forgot to mention was in Rocky 3, the wrestler. He played Thunder Lips. Then they started doing little smaller versions, like subtle versions, like Rocky in his yellow and black robe, Rocky in this outfit, Rocky in that. There's only so many ways you could put a Rocky action figure out there. And there were a lot of actually figures. I sent you some pictures of them. Not all of them were cool. Some of them looked really ugly during the 80s and such, when they were just trying to make it. There's a whole series of bad Rocky action figures, but these were actually pretty good. And the one that's very valuable is when I went to meet Burt Young, I said, oh, let me go find my son's Paulie action figure. And I couldn't find it, somewhere up in the attic, whatever. But that one, believe it or not, of all the action figures for the Rocky series, Paulie is the most expensive one, because maybe no kid wanted to get the meat cutting loser that was an alcoholic. Go figure, you know.
I wonder why that is. Him and Snoke. They were just on the.
He was the Winchester of the Rocky series. No kid wanted to play with Charles Emerson Winchester the third.
Right. The Colonel Potter, boy, those things.
Colonel Potter. Oh, let me tell you, the Jamie Farr Klinger one jumped off the shelves.
That's right.
But the same thing with Rocky. But no, and you know what though? Since then, NECA has come out with more realistic Rocky figures where the sculpts are better and they do better face sculpts of the characters. This is Amigo one that just came out a year ago because they got the license again. So that's Apollo Creed. But no, if you're into it, and if you like the statue that we talked about earlier, you can buy a replica of the Rocky statue that they have down in Philadelphia for your home. Not the life-size one. I'm talking maybe about, you know, a desk size one.
And I do remember they brought out was it maybe a life-size, like a bust of Rocky that you can, you know, you can get those those busts of the Star Wars figures. Sorry?
Yeah, there was a punching bag. I remember that. You could blow up a punching bag, then you beat them up.
That makes sense. Now that's a good tie-in. That's a good tie-in.
A Rocky punching bag, yeah.
And the question we've got to ask, were there Rocky trading cards, and were there
were.
Okay.
Rocky 2, not Rocky 1. There was Rocky 2 trading cards. I remember.
And were there Rocky glasses that you could buy? Okay.
I don't think, but they did the trading cards. They did the board game. They probably did the puzzles. There was always like certain things that everybody had: puzzles, trading cards, T-shirts, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it is what it is. And then it's come out on Blu-ray and DVD and 4K. And there's a documentary with Stallone about the history of Rocky Balboa. So, I mean, it's coming up on its 50th year in a couple more years. I mean, 47 years.
And
it's a lot of Rocky.
And it is. And it's a great look. It's a great film. I think there's no, you know, Rocky Balboa is very good, but really the original, it's that 70s time capsule, but it still tells a great story. You still, even if you know how it's going to end, that once that music goes and you just can't help but get excited and get behind Rocky. It's a fantastic movie, and it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it before.
I might go see it on November 11th for that one night.
Yeah, I think I would probably go. I would do that too if we can.
Just to hear the crowd screaming. You know how it's going to end, but there's just something about it when you sit there. And of course, as I told you earlier, that's how we all know the fall of the communist Russia happened, because of Rocky.
That's
right.
If
it wasn't for Rocky Balboa, there'd still be communists in Russia. But no. He did that whole speech at the end where if you could change, I could change, we all could change, you know, and that's it. Right. That's all you needed.
Well, we're about to go get changed. We need to hit the showers after that. If you haven't seen Rocky, please go watch it. It is great. If you haven't seen some of our other episodes on classic 70s movies and all other different topics, how can you find out about those, Mitch?
Oh, that's easy, Ed. You just go to the Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure channel and you start cruising through them, because listen, Halloween's almost here. You want to know what spooky movies to watch? We have that episode too. It's going to be Christmas soon. You want to know what anti-Christmas movies you should watch? We got that too. Plus we have 70s disaster movies. We have King Kong. We do a lot of 70s stuff on the show. So if you're old as dirt like me and Ed, you'll love it, our show. So go over there, subscribe to it, check out, see what we have. It's as easy as punching a pile of meat.
That's right. That's right. So that's it for this week's episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. Thanks so much for watching. This is Ed Dollister signing off.
This is Mitch Halleck saying, yo.
Yo, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yo.